Have you ever heard of a book written almost 800 years ago that tries to answer pretty much every question you could have about God, humanity, and the universe? Well, it's real. And it's a huge work, thousands of pages long, with this incredibly bold title, the Summa Theologica. It literally means a summary of all theology.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with what the Summa even is, then check out its really unique way of making an argument. After that, we'll take a quick tour of its three main parts. And finally, we'll see why the way it's all put together is just so brilliant.
So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say the Summa Theologica?
Well, the title, A Summary of Theology, tells you a lot. It was written way back in the 13th century by this absolutely brilliant Catholic saint named Thomas Aquinas, and his whole goal? To create the ultimate one-stop guide for students of theology.
You can really think of it as the ultimate FAQ page for, well, everything. Aquinas wasn't just jotting down some thoughts. Nope. He was building this complete, interconnected system of belief. It's kind of like a massive cathedral made of ideas, where every single piece is designed to fit perfectly with all the others.
So let's see how he actually builds this thing, because what's so fascinating isn't just what he asks, but how he argues. It's got this very specific and frankly genius structure.
And this right here is the blueprint for the entire book. See, Aquinas didn't just write chapters, he structured every single idea like a formal debate. He called each one an article, and it follows the same logical pattern every single time.
And this five-step method is the engine that drives the whole book. Instead of just telling you what he thinks, Aquinas starts with a question. Then, and this is the incredible part, he lists all the strongest objections against his own position. He gives the other side a voice first. Only then does he offer a counterstatement, his own detailed answer. And then he goes back and replies to every single one of those initial objections. It's a formal debate repeated over 3,000 times.
To make this a little less abstract, let's just quickly walk through one of the most famous articles in the whole book. This is how he takes on the huge question of whether God exists.
So he starts by laying out the best arguments against his own view. I mean, how amazing is that? It shows he's taking the other side seriously. He isn't afraid of a challenge, he actually puts it right up front.
Next, he introduces a single, powerful quote, usually from the Bible or a respected philosopher, that points in the other direction. This kind of acts as a pivot for the whole argument. And here's the main event. This is where he presents his own reasoning for God's existence. He lays out 5 logical arguments, which are now famous as the 5 ways, and they're all based on things we can see and observe in the world around us. And only after he's made his own case does he circle all the way back to carefully answer each of the original objections one by one.
Okay, so now that we've got the blueprint of how it works, let's do a quick flyover of the 3 main parts of this massive book. The whole thing follows this grand story. Everything comes from God, and everything is trying to get back to God.
So, part 1 is the foundation. It's all about establishing God as the source of, well, everything. Aquinas starts with the biggest question you can ask. Can we prove God exists with logic? What is God even like? From there, he dives into the mystery of the Trinity, and then he moves outward, describing how all of creation, from angels to the physical universe to us, flows directly from God. This part is basically a map of the universe, starting from its single origin point.
Now let's jump to the second part, which is actually the biggest section in the whole book. This is where the focus shifts from God to us, to humanity, and our journey back to Him.
This huge section is basically a detailed manual for the human journey. If part 1 was about where we came from, part 2 is about our purpose and how we can get there. Aquinas goes deep into human psychology, asking, what is true happiness? Then he breaks down our actions, our emotions, and the habits, the virtues and vices that make us who we are. This is where he builds his famous ideas on ethics, exploring how things like natural law and divine grace work together to guide us back toward God.
So the final part of the Summa describes the specific path back to God. If part 2 was the map of the journey, part 3 is the guide who shows us the way home.
Aquinas argues that, since humans can't make that journey back to God all on their own, God gave us the way, Jesus Christ. So this last section is all about Christ being the bridge between God and us. It looks at his life and his nature, and then it explains how the sacraments of the church, things like baptism and the Eucharist, are the practical, real-world ways God gives us to be a part of Christ's life and complete our journey back to him.
Okay, so after seeing all these pieces, let's just step back for a second and look at the whole incredible project. Why go through all this trouble? Why this specific structure?
The big takeaway here is that the Summa isn't just a list of things to believe. It's a demonstration that faith can be a totally rational system. Aquinas really believed that faith and reason are like two wings that help the human spirit fly up to God. He wasn't afraid of tough questions, because he was confident that if you ask them honestly, you'll only find a more logical, more beautiful, more coherent divine plan.
And you know, that really leaves us with a final thought. For 800 years, this book has been a cornerstone of Christian thinking because of its sheer ambition. It presents a faith that isn't scared of reason, but actually welcomes it. So whether you agree with every single conclusion or not, the challenge it leaves us with is a big one. What holds your worldview together? Can you not only say what you believe, but explain why you believe it, step by logical step? The Summa is like this timeless invitation to build a faith that you don't just feel, but one that you can also understand.